Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 66, Going Through Hell or High Water for the Sect. After traveling through the jungle for a bit, Xianxia started noticing clues that told the story of what had occurred. He quickly became convinced that his suppositions were correct. After emerging from the nameless mountains, he pushed on at top speed for several days until he was back in the Fallen Star Mountains, where he discovered the ruins of the Luo Chen clan. It seems Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei really did get word back to the sect. When he thought back to the bitter events he had lived through, he sighed, then turned and leaped back up onto the wind skiff. Sitting down cross-legged, he set it whooshing off into the distance. Back to the sect, he declared, eyes shining with anticipation. Then he realized that he most certainly had performed meritorious service for the sect, and would surely be handsomely rewarded when he got back. That got him even more excited. As he traveled along, he turned his attention to his bag of holding. As he sifted through and organized all of the other bags of holding he had collected from the Luo Chen clan cultivators, he found quite a few random items inside, as well as spirit stones. In one bag of holding, although he had forgotten who it had originally belonged to, he found the most valuable of all the items. It was a seed, roughly the size of a human fist. It pulsed, almost like a beating heart, as though it contained something alive. However, the beating was growing weaker and weaker. After a bit of thought, Xiaochun's skill with plants and vegetation led him to a shocking conclusion. This was a valuable and legendary spirit seed, which had supposedly become extinct long ago. It was known as a beast birth seed. According to the legends, if it absorbed another spirit creature's quintessence, it would be able to naturally reproduce that very same spirit creature. To those powerful beasts which had difficulty reproducing, beast birth seeds like this were virtually priceless. It was the same for cultivators who had powerful spirit creature pets. Cultivators like that all thirsted to possess successive generations of their powerful spirit creatures. Unfortunately, they were usually limited to a single pet, which meant that beast birth seeds were incredibly valuable to them. It was impossible to say how the enemy Luo Chen clan cultivator had come to possess such a valuable item. Presumably, it was some type of good fortune that person had come across. After all, the Luo Chen clan had been located in the Fallen Star Mountains, a place of boundless mysteries. After some more thought, Xiaochun came to the conclusion that whichever Luo Chen clan cultivator discovered the beast birth seed likely didn't know what it was, which would explain why it hadn't been maintained properly. Along the way, Xiaochun picked up some wood which was infused with spiritual energy. After carving it into a little box, he carefully placed the beast birth seed into it, whereupon the seed's life force fluctuations gradually stabilized. Xiaochun put the wooden box away and took a deep breath. Then, he sent the wind skiff speeding over the horizon, following the same path they had originally taken, to make his way closer and closer to the spirit stream sect. A month passed by quickly enough. On the original trip, they hadn't possessed very many spirit stones, and thus had only used the wind skiff at night. But now, Xiaochun's bag of holding was bulging with spirit stones, and he wasn't worried at all about wasting them. Therefore, it only took a month before the spirit stream sect's South Bank Gate came into view. It's been more than half a year since I left. Finally, I'm back. Xiaochun stood atop the wind skiff, hair whipping in the wind, looking every bit like a powerful master. However, he suddenly decided that it was the wrong image, and quickly changed back into the dilapidated, blood-stained outer sect disciple's robe that he had worn during his desperate battle with the Luo Chen clan. Now he looked like someone who had been willing to fight to the death for the sect. Upon his return, the bloodstains on his garments, and the various places where the cloth had been ripped and punctured, would bear clear witness to the dangerous crises he had faced. Feeling very pleased, he sent the wind skiff even closer to the sect. However, just when he was about to cross the border, an invisible barrier appeared, sending the wind skiff bouncing backward. He thought. The force of the rebound almost knocked him off the wind skiff. It was at this point that a beam of light suddenly shot toward him from the main gate. A young man appeared, expression placid as he looked at Bai Xiaochun. Unknown fellow Daoist, what brings you to the Spirit Stream sect? Even as the words left his mouth, he looked at the wind skiff, and then at Bai Xiaochun's clothes, and his brow furrowed. You have a Spirit Stream sect wind skiff, and you're wearing the robes of an outer sect disciple? Plus the main gate of the Spirit Stream sect prevented you from entering. Who are you? The young man's eyes glittered coldly as he performed an incantation gesture with his right hand. Instantly, his cultivation base surged with the fluctuations of the 8th level of qi condensation. Bai Xiaochun backed up, looking at the shield in confusion. Elder brother, he said, what's going on? Why can't I enter the sect? I'm outer sect disciple Bai Xiaochun from Fragrant Cloud Peak. The young man frowned, and just when he was about to say something, he started in surprise. Hold on, you're Bai Xiaochun. The more he studied Bai Xiaochun, the more familiar he looked. He had attended Bai Xiaochun's funeral service, in which his portrait had been on display above his gravestone. A tremor ran through the young man, and when he realized that Bai Xiaochun's garments were stained with blood, he gasped. You're not dead. I'm not dead at all. Even as Bai Xiaochun stared in surprise, the young man excitedly pulled out a jade slip and sent a message back to the sect. As the news about Bai Xiaochun was being sent back, Li Qinghu was in secluded meditation on Fragrant Cloud Peak. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and a tremor ran through him. At the same time, the news was passed to the sect leader, whose jaw dropped. He immediately sent a stream of divine sense out to the main gate of the south bank, and when he saw Bai Xiaochun, he was first shocked, then delighted. He immediately began to send notifications out into the sect. It only took a few breaths of time for gasps of disbelief to begin to rise up. The collective sound was so loud that it was even faintly audible outside of the main gate. Furthermore, bells began to toll. Bai Xiaochun? Didn't he die? How could he be alive? Countless people began to fly out from within the sect. Somewhat surprisingly, the very first in line was Hu Yunfei. When he emerged from the main gate and saw Bai Xiaochun, an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. After the deadly chase they had both participated in, he never wanted to believe that Bai Xiaochun was actually dead. However, deep in his heart, he was sure that no disciple could have been made it out of such a bitter situation. Now, he was so excited he began to cry. Junior brother Bai, he cried. Laughing, he rushed forward and embraced Bai Xiaochun. Elder brother Hu. Bai Xiaochun replied, blinking. By this point, he realized that the sect had thought him to be dead. He looked at Hu Yunfei, eyes brimming with happiness. Come on, let's get back to the sect. Hu Yunfei said excitedly. He grabbed Bai Xiaochun and immediately headed back through the main gate. With Hu Yunfei there, Bai Xiaochun could now enter the sect. As for the young man from earlier, he followed along, clearly shaken. He had personally participated in the extermination of the Luo Chen clan, and had seen the evidence of the battle fought by Bai Xiaochun, including the mangled corpses of the Luo Chen clan cultivators. To see that Bai Xiaochun had returned alive left him deeply astonished. Almost as soon as Bai Xiaochun walked through the front gate, more people began to rush toward him from all directions. Ninth Fatty. Big Fatty Zhong, Third Fatty He, and the other Fatty elder brothers from the servants' district were so happy they were shaking. That was especially true of Big Fatty Zhong, who gave Bai Xiaochun a big bear hug, tears streaming down his face. Bai Xiaochun was moved. Seeing how many people were crowding around him, he suddenly felt as if everything he'd done really had been worth it. Then, a beam of light flew over, which was Li Qinghu, who had an incredulous look on his face as he looked at Bai Xiaochun. In his hands was a bag, within which were all the blood-stained scraps of clothing he had gathered up when searching for Bai Xiaochun. He more than anyone understood the grave and deadly peril Bai Xiaochun had faced. Bai Xiaochun hurried forward, clasping hands and bowing to Li Qinghu. Greetings, Peak Lord. Li Qinghu was normally a very calm person, but right now he couldn't stop himself from trembling. Reaching out, he placed his hand on Bai Xiaochun's head and said, "I'm just glad you're alive," Li Qinghu said. "Just glad you're alive. This is my home," Bai Xiaochun said, puffing his chest out. "I'm willing to go through hell or high water for the sect." Then he waved his sleeve, deliberately revealing the numerous blood-stained holes in it. People continued to stream over from all three of the South Bank's mountain peaks. Everyone wanted to see Bai Xiaochun, and when they saw his dilapidated, blood-stained clothing, they were shocked. That was especially true when people began to spread the words he had just spoken. Everyone was shaken, and when they looked at Bai Xiaochun, in their hearts they felt that he was a true chosen of the sect. As the crowd built, the weeping voice of a young woman could be heard. It was none other than Du Lingfei. She had spent the recent days awash with tears, to the point where she had even lost weight. When she heard people saying that Bai Xiaochun had returned, her mind began to thrum, and she instantly dropped everything and raced over. When she actually laid eyes on Bai Xiaochun, even more tears began to flow. She hurried over and wrapped her arms around him, crying and laughing at the same time. She almost didn't seem to dare to believe that what she was seeing was true. In response, Bai Xiaochun felt a warm sensation in his heart. His hands almost began to move in the direction of certain bulging areas of her clothing, but then he remembered that there were lots of people watching, and he held back. "It's like I said, elder sister Du," he said coolly, lifting his chin. "If I, Bai Xiaochun, have only one breath of air left, I would never let anyone harm you." As the sappy words left his mouth, he seemed like he was looking down on the entire world. However, Du Lingfei went a bit limp, and deep within her eyes, the hidden emotions therein turned even sweeter than before. People from the Hall of Justice were also there, led by Ouyang. When he saw Bai Xiaochun, he looked shocked for a moment, but then profoundly pleased. That was especially true when he saw Bai Xiaochun's tattered state, and then heard the words he had just spoken to Li Qinghu, upon which he nodded his head. "Bai Xiaochun, I am Ouyang from the Hall of Justice." When Bai Xiaochun heard the words Hall of Justice, his heart thumped, but then he thought back to the incredible service he had performed. Chest puffed out just like before, he clasped hands respectfully to Ouyang. Ouyang rarely smiled, but he was smiling now as he said, "Why don't you come back with me to see the sect leader and talk about what happened with the Luochen clan?" He waved his finger in Bai Xiaochun's direction, causing a spirit fog to appear beneath his feet, which sent him flying off into the distance with Ouyang. Li Qinghu looked profoundly glad as he transformed into a beam of light that also shot away with them. As for all the other disciples, they watched Bai Xiaochun leave, and most heaved surprised sighs, and began to discuss the matter amongst themselves as they dispersed. Of course, the news about Bai Xiaochun being alive spread rapidly. Eventually, virtually everyone in the Spirit Stream sect came to know of the matter. Most people were very happy, but back in his Immortal's cave, Chen Dajin was shaking, and a look of terror could be seen on his face. "Damn it, I can't believe he's not dead. How could he have escaped from such deadly pursuit? He probably doesn't know that I'm the one who arranged for him to go on that mission though. Right? There's no way he could know." Various expressions flashed across Chen Dajin's face. Finally, he sighed, thinking about all the possible bad things that could happen. Chapter 67. Elder Brother, Where's Our Master? The Spirit Stream sect had 8 mountain peaks. 4 were on the north bank, 3 were on the south bank, and 1 was in the middle. That was Mount Dao Seed, which was the public seat of the sect's power. Normally, sect leader Zheng Yuandong would handle sect affairs from that very location. Currently, bells were tolling as the lords of the various mountain peaks of the north and south bank sat tall and straight in the main temple hall. The sect leader was also there, sitting in the center position. Soon, Li Qinghu and Ouyang arrived with Bai Xiaochun. They left Bai Xiaochun outside of the temple hall, telling him to wait there as they went in. There were 4 disciples stationed as guards outside the temple, who cast curious glances Bai Xiaochun's way. Bai Xiaochun smiled back at them. This was his first time coming to this place, The spiritual energy was abundant, and the fragrant aroma of plants and flowers filled the air. There were no extraneous sounds in the air. Everything was calm and quiet, much different than Fragrant Cloud Peak. This was a very important place in the sect, and normally, any disciple who came here would act very cautious and discreet. However, Bai Xiaochun didn't seem to feel any pressure at all, and stood there looking very much at ease. The 4 disciples couldn't help but sigh at this, and mused that Bai Xiaochun really did deserve to be known as a big shot in the sect, someone who had performed an incredible service. After all, ordinary people could never act so casually in a place like this. The truth was that although Bai Xiaochun feared death, after considering the meritorious service he had performed, he knew that he wouldn't be dying here. Therefore, it was only natural that he wouldn't be afraid. He stuck out his chest, heart filled with anticipation over what his reward might be. Considering the level of service I provided for the sect, they'll have to give me a medicinal pill to increase my longevity by 100 years. They'll most likely give me 1 million merit points too, and probably an incredible immortal's cave. I'm sure to be promoted to the inner sect as well. Ha ha ha. The more he thought about it, the more excited he got. After a long moment passed, however, no word came calling him into the temple. Bai Xiaochun was a bit taken aback. He continued to wait until he was yawning before, finally, a voice spoke in a somewhat begrudging tone. Bai Xiaochun, come in. His spirits instantly lifted. Taking a deep breath, he tried to look like the picture of a disciple who would go through hell or high water for his sect. Striding into the main temple, he clasped hands and bowed. Disciple Bai Xiaochun from Fragrant Cloud Peak, at your service. Greetings, sect leader. Greetings, other senior members of the sect. After offering formal greetings, Bai Xiaochun looked up. He immediately caught sight of an old man sitting in the middle of the group. He looked threatening without being angry, and wore a long white robe. His cultivation base was completely unreadable. He was surrounded by 8 others, a group of 6 men and 2 women. Li Qinghu and Ouyang were among them, and all of them seemed to be measuring up this Bai Xiaochun who had somehow returned alive. Their eyes lingered on his garments. Considering the power of their eyesight, it was instantly obvious to them that Bai Xiaochun's clothing had not been intentionally torn, but that he had truly experienced a deadly battle. They also noticed how pure and fair he seemed. He spoke courteously, and was neither haughty nor overly humble. From the expression on his face, he seemed completely at ease. Although none of them reacted at all to what they were seeing, inwardly, their impressions of Bai Xiaochun improved even more. However, a few were still somewhat suspicious of exactly what had occurred. Li Qinghu looked at Bai Xiaochun and then slowly said, Bai Xiaochun, please explain in detail everything involved with the mission to the Luochen clan, from start to finish. Looking very serious, Bai Xiaochun calmly recounted everything that had occurred, from beginning to end. He left out the incident with the black-robed old man. That was his secret to keep. He wove Feng Yang sacrificing himself into the story, as well as the various difficulties they had faced. He was an intelligent person, so he didn't mention anything at all of what he had done that was worthy of merit, but instead continued to praise Feng Yang, Du Lingfei, and Hu Yunfei. It's all my fault for being useless, he said. Elder brother Feng died trying to save me. It's all my fault. The more he went on in this way, the more the sect leader and the others' eyes shone with approval. Of course, these people had practiced cultivation for many years, and were as crafty as devils. From the moment Bai Xiaochun came back wearing that one particular set of clothing, they could tell what type of person he was. Even so, their praise only continued to grow. After he lost consciousness, he just woke up all healed, the sect leader thought, smiling. He didn't mind this version of Bai Xiaochun's explanation. After all, disciples always had secrets to maintain. It was best for them to feel like they belonged in the sect, and exercising absolute control of every aspect of their lives would only serve to have the opposite effect. After the story was finished, the sect leader said, Bai Xiaochun, your reward was already announced several months ago. Back then, you became the Spirit Stream Sect's prestige disciple. When the sect leader actually spoke the words prestige disciple, a strange feeling rose up in his heart. After all, this was the first time there had ever been a living prestige disciple. That was one of the reasons why the discussion had been so difficult earlier. The position of prestige disciple was extremely important, and had previously only been conferred upon people who had died in battle, never living disciples. And yet, here Bai Xiaochun was right in front of them, healthy and no worse for wear. That was one reason why all of them had been so shocked to hear the news that he was alive. Furthermore, it was a status that could not just be stripped away. The funeral service had been carried out, and the meritorious service performed. The group had been somewhat perplexed about what to do, and thus had left Bai Xiaochun waiting outside for some time. After much discussion, they decided that there was no way to change what had already been announced. In accordance with the sect rules, they would allow Bai Xiaochun to keep that position. Prestige disciple? Bai Xiaochun asked, looking shocked. He had never heard of any such title before, so he simply stood there, looking blankly at the sect leader and the other senior sect members. Although all of them had strange expressions on their faces, they didn't say anything else regarding a reward. Bai Xiaochun couldn't hold back from asking, that's it. That's it, replied the sect leader, smiling. Bai Xiaochun instantly started to get nervous, and then prepared to start explaining how difficult the journey had been, how many times he had almost died. Before he could start, Li Qinghu, who knew Bai Xiaochun better than anyone, cleared his throat and said, "Hurry up and thank the sect leader. The title of prestige disciple has only been given out 10 times throughout the history of the Spirit Stream sect. You are the only person to get it within the past 1,000 years. As the prestige disciple, you rank higher than the inner sect, and have the most prestigious glory in the entire Spirit Stream sect. Your descendants will all have special access to sect resources, and will be inner sect disciples from birth. The Spirit Stream sect will protect your bloodline for all eternity. Currently, there are 9 great clans who are part of the Spirit Stream sect, and all of them are prestige clans. It's a truly glorious and honorable position." When Bai Xiaochun heard the explanation, a somewhat sad expression appeared on his face. His spirits suddenly sank, and he looked miserably at Li Qinghu, then back at the sect leader. He wasn't sure what to say. Although the position of prestige disciple seemed incredible, the truth was that it had been created for the descendants of people who had died. But he was still alive. Sadly, Bai Xiaochun was now in the unfortunate position of being jealous of his own progeny. "Thanks, sect leader," he said sadly, lacking the energy to even speak. Sect leader Zhang Yuandong cleared his throat awkwardly. "From this day on, you may address me as elder brother sect leader." The matter of having Bai Xiaochun become the apprentice of his own master had been made because he assumed Bai Xiaochun had sacrificed his life. But now that he was alive, it led to a very awkward situation. The sect leader, despite having many years of life under his belt, would now have a 20-year-old kid calling him elder brother. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. "Really?" Bai Xiaochun asked, his eyes widening. All of a sudden, he felt much, much better. He had entered the temple hall with high expectations, only to have them cruelly crushed. That led to him being in a horrible mood. But now, things had changed. Based on the meritorious service you performed, and considering that you had no formal master, I took the responsibility to accept you as an apprentice of my own master. Therefore, from now on you can call me elder brother." The sect leader couldn't feel more awkward. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath, and his eyes filled with excitement. He suddenly was filled with the sensation that the sect truly had treated him well. The sect leader's master would most definitely be ranked as a prime elder in the sect, which caused Bai Xiaochun's eyes to radiate with excitement. From now on, he thought, nobody will dare to bully me, not with an awesome master like that. Ha ha ha. Heart leaping with joy, he clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Many thanks, elder brother sect leader," he said, sounding elated. "Elder brother sect leader, where exactly is our master? I would love to go pay my respects." A strange expression could be seen on the sect leader's face as he slowly said, "There's no hurry in that." There was a portrait made of him before he passed away in meditation, which was enshrined on the backside of the mountain. "I've already made arrangements for some people to escort you over there shortly." Bai Xiaochun felt as if he were being struck by lightning. Passed away in meditation. Enshrined on the backside of the mountain. His jaw dropped as the words he had just spoken echoed in his mind. After a long moment, he pulled himself together. The master he had become apprentice to had already passed away. Bai Xiaochun was now starting to seethe with anger, and his mind was buzzing. Once again his heart sank, and he wanted to cry, although no tears would come. It was in a virtual daze that he allowed himself to be led to the rear of the mountain, where he paid formal respects to the portrait of his master. Afterward, he left Mount Daoseed and returned to Fragrant Cloud Peak. On Fragrant Cloud Peak, numerous disciples hurried over to offer greetings. Curious expressions could be seen in their eyes, and someone even kindly took him over to look at his own gravestone. When Bai Xiaochun saw the gravestone, everything seemed to go black. Eventually, he found himself back in his courtyard, sitting blankly in his log cabin, rage building up within him. I became the apprentice of a painting. Several days later, he was still there, looking miserable. Half a month passed before he managed to collect himself. Sighing miserably, he left his residence to look for Big Fatty Zhong, to reminisce about the past. However, as soon as he walked out, he ran into an outer sect disciple who instantly clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Greetings, Sect Uncle Bai." Bai Xiaochun took a few more steps, then stopped and turned around, eyes shining as he grabbed the outer sect disciple and pulled him forward. "What did you just call me?" "Sect Uncle Bai," the outer sect disciple instantly replied. "Sir, you're the junior brother of the sect leader. The disciple would naturally call you Sect Uncle Bai." Bai Xiaochun's fists loosened, and his eyes began to shine even more brightly. His heart also started pounding. This new status of his wasn't all that bad after all. He had a terrifying level of seniority. Licking his lips, he began to laugh, which frightened the outer sect disciple so much that he started to edge backward, unsure of what madness had struck Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun suddenly stopped laughing. Clearing his throat, he put on the air of a senior sect member and nodded slightly at the outer sect disciple. Instead of going to look for Big Fatty Zhong, it was with keen anticipation that he headed toward the missions office. Because that was where the most people would be. Meanwhile, Li Qinghu had returned to Fragrant Cloud Peak, and was in secluded meditation. After seating himself cross-legged, he thought for a bit, and then waved his sleeve. Expression serious, he began to concoct pills. "Xiaochun is stubborn and mischievous. I need to prepare a life-saving magical item for him. Unfortunately, I'm not very good at equipment forging, but I can make a batch of 9 Ultimates pills to trade with the Pillstream sect. When they find out I'm preparing a magical item for a Qi condensation disciple, and a younger relative at that, they'll definitely rip me off." Li Qinghu shook his head, but didn't mind. In order to concoct 9 Ultimates pills, he would have to use some of his own heartblood, but when the thought about how close Bai Xiaochun had come to dying, he settled his qi, cleared his mind, and began preparations to start concocting. Chapter 68. Sect Nephew, Don't Rush Off. Bai Xiaochun was the type of person who liked to find the fun in anything. Now that he had discovered the joy in being the junior brother of the sect leader, he couldn't be more happy. He strutted along the mountain paths of the sect until he saw the missions office off in the distance. Clearing his throat, he straightened his garments and assumed the air of a senior member of the sect. Sticking his chin up, he clasped his hands behind his back and sauntered forward. The missions office was one of the busiest places in the sect, and today it was as packed as usual. The clamor of outer sect disciples coming and going could be heard from quite a distance away. When Bai Xiaochun arrived, he stood there with a benevolent smile on his face, looking around at all the outer sect disciples. Almost as soon as he appeared, people noticed, and the disciples nearest to him, who were in the middle of discussing various mission-related topics, suddenly gaped. That's Sect Uncle Bai. Greetings, Sect Uncle Bai." Clasping hands in his direction, they called out, "Greetings, Sect Uncle Bai." After hearing them, more people looked over, and soon, virtually all of the outer sect disciples in the area were clasping hands in greeting. Bursting with joy at hearing everyone call him Sect Uncle Bai, he strode forward, smiling, hands clasped behind his back as he said, "Keep up the good work, everyone." The surrounding disciples looked at him enviously and began to murmur among themselves. Wow, sect Uncle Bai is the sect leader's junior brother. There were a few honor guards stationed at the missions office, and when they saw Bai Xiaochun walking up, they hastily rose to their feet and clasped hands in greeting. Virtually the entire missions office lurched to a halt as everyone turned to look. Bai Xiaochun was only getting more exciting. "Carry on, everyone," he said. "There's no need to worry about me. I'm just here on behalf of Elder Brother Sect Leader to inspect the outer sect disciples of the Spirit Stream sect." Happiness blossomed in the depths of his heart. In response to his words, the surrounding disciples once again clasped hands, and even the elders from the missions office came out and nodded politely to him. However, although Bai Xiaochun had clearly told them not to pay him any heed, he didn't leave. He strolled through the crowd, nodding to those he recognized and reveling in their calls of sect Uncle Bai. Some of the disciples even said it 10 times. Soon, strange looks appeared on their faces as they realized that apparently, Bai Xiaochun had actually come to hear them call him sect Uncle Bai. In the end, he decided not to push things too far. Waving at everyone, he swaggered away, and soon the missions office returned to its normal state of affairs. What an awesome status, he thought, his eyes shining. Not only did he feel incredibly happy, most importantly, he could tell that his status was vastly removed from everyone else. Prestige disciple. Junior brother of the sect leader. Might as well just say that nobody in the sect will ever dare to provoke me, right? Having reached this point in his train of thoughts, Bai Xiaochun laughed heartily and hurried off in the direction of the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion. The 10,000 Medicines Pavilion was also packed. It didn't take long for him to get there, and when he did, he looked up at the 10 stone steles and listened to everyone call him sect Uncle Bai. He stood there for quite a while, sighing, until strange expressions began to appear on the faces of the disciples. Reluctantly, he left. By that time, evening was falling, but he didn't feel tired at all, and went over to one of the locations where a lot of outer sect disciples resided. Xu Baocai had just stepped out, and when he saw Bai Xiaochun, he immediately clasped hands. Bai Xiaochun thumped Xu Baocai on the shoulder and then spoke in a wise, reprimanding tone. "Ah, it's you, little treasure. After all the time I've been gone, you haven't made much progress with your cultivation base. We can't have that. You need to work hard at your cultivation." Xu Baocai's jaw dropped, and he blinked. His heart trembled a bit after hearing Bai Xiaochun call him little treasure. At this age, only his father would call him something like that, and even then, only in private. Despite feeling a bit odd, he didn't dare to say anything, and merely nodded in assent. As an important person like myself. Bai Xiaochun suddenly realized that with a position like his, it would be improper to simply refer to himself as I, and so he decided to try to make himself sound like an important person, like Li Qinghu. He cleared his throat. Clasping his hands behind his back, he stuck his jaw out and said, "As an important person like myself, I'm not very familiar with this area. Could you show me around a bit?" Xu Baocai had no choice but to immediately begin to show Bai Xiaochun around. More and more disciples were returning home, and when they caught sight Bai Xiaochun, they looked a bit surprised. Many of them had already seen him earlier at the missions office and the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion. Seeing him here caused them to exchange quizzical glances. However, they had no other option than to clasp hands and offer greetings. Bai Xiaochun once again reveled in the glory of this status. Joy surged in his heart at the sight of one outer sect disciple after another offering greetings. It was late at night before he finally left, feeling very pleased with himself. As he walked along, he saw the Spirit Tail Chicken Farm, and decided to stop by. Before long, calls of sect Uncle Bai could be heard. When he left, he held 2 Spirit Tail Chickens in his hands. Ah, the perks of having status. When I wanted to eat chickens before, I had to steal them. Now I can just take them openly. Who would dare to provoke me now, huh? My elder brother is the sect leader. Bai Xiaochun hummed a little tune as he strolled back to his residence, emanating an air of pride and complacency. Early the next morning, when the sun had just risen, Bai Xiaochun crawled out of bed, feeling in very high spirits. Straightening his clothes, He looked at himself in his copper mirror and selected the best pose he could come up with, then stepped out. Then he went about doing things in a very serious way, as if it were his job. He didn't go to the missions office, but instead visited many other locations on Fragrant Cloud Peak. He even went to watch the fighting competition. Throughout the day, he heard countless people call him Sect Uncle Bai. To him, it was almost as if he had become an immortal. His spirits were so high he nearly burst. And then, the third day arrived. Then the fourth, and the fifth. He strolled around the sect for more than 10 days in a row. By that point, virtually all of the outer sect disciples on Fragrant Cloud Peak had called him Sect Uncle Bai, and were on the verge of going crazy. To call a kid like him Sect Uncle might be fine if it only happened once. But the more they had to call it out, the worse they felt. Bai Xiaochun's days were long and fulfilling, and he especially liked it when he ran into people he knew. He would quickly hurry over and call out a greeting. One day he saw Zhao Yidua. Eyes shining, he hurried over and grabbed his arm and said, "Sect Nephew Yidua, long time no see. Don't rush off." When Zhao Yidua heard the term Sect Nephew, his face twitched. "Sect Uncle Bai, we've run into each other several times in the past few days." Bai Xiaochun blinked, then cleared his throat. It was at that point that he saw someone else nearby, someone who had noticed him and was just turning to leave. He said. "Sect Nephew Xiang, long time no see." He quickly released Zhao Yidua and hurried over to stand in front of Chen Xiang, face beaming. Chen Xiang seemed to be on the verge of going mad. He had run into Bai Xiaochun every day recently, usually at least 3 times. From what he had heard, it was the same with everyone who personally knew Bai Xiaochun. The person who had it worst of all was an unlucky fellow who called himself Lord Wolf, who supposedly was visited by Bai Xiaochun dozens of times per day. "Sect Uncle Bai, I have something to take care of, I have to run." Chen Xiang promptly fled as though his life depended on it. 10 days later, the outer sect disciples on Fragrant Cloud Peak had begun to pretend not to notice Bai Xiaochun. That of course left him less than pleased, and forced him to take the initiative more often. Bai Xiaochun grabbed one of Zhu Xianxia's former fans and said, "Aya, you seem so familiar. Come, as an important person like myself, I sometimes forget things. Have we met already?" The disciple looked downright wretched as Bai Xiaochun began to chat with him. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, and after the disciple had called him Sect Uncle by more than 30 times, Bai Xiaochun finally seemed pleased, and allowed the miserable-looking disciple to leave. However, such a strategy wasn't really viable long-term. After realizing that everyone was avoiding him, he decided that he needed to take more initiative. In the following days, he would frequently clear his throat to alert people to his presence. The results were only average, leaving Bai Xiaochun feeling quite down. Thankfully, there was another girl besides Du Lingfei whom Bai Xiaochun found quite charming. It was Hu Xiaomai, who would take the initiative to come find him every day. There was no need for him to clear his throat. She was so enthusiastic she could hardly stand still in front of him, and would follow him around fawningly and call him Sect Uncle. The other outer sect disciples felt a bit sick when they saw that, but Bai Xiaochun was delighted. Some time ago, Bai Xiaochun had provided her with some education regarding the mysterious little turtle of Fragrant Cloud Peak. She still adored the little turtle, and on one occasion when she was walking around with Bai Xiaochun, she asked him what he thought of the little turtle. "The little turtle? He's mysterious and unfathomable. He is naturally talented, and in the 10,000-year history of the Spirit Stream sect, he is a rarely seen, grandiose figure. He's like a white cloud in a clear sky, someone that everyone can look up to." In the end, he coughed dryly. After uttering such grandiose words, Bai Xiaochun had to work hard not to just blurt out to Hu Xiaomai that he was the little turtle. However, he was still determined to find a time when he was the focus of all attention to tell Hu Xiaomai about his grand identity. "I feel the same way," Hu Xiaomai responded, eyes glittering brightly. "I've told a lot of people that the little turtle is oblivious to material rewards. He pursues the Tao of medicine, and does not worry himself with worldly matters. He's definitely like a white cloud in a clear sky." For a while, there had been a lot of rumors that Bai Xiaochun was the little turtle. However, those rumors had eventually been refuted. Everyone had an idea of what they thought the little turtle looked like, and it definitely wasn't Bai Xiaochun. The fact that Hu Xiaomai responded in such a way didn't really register to Bai Xiaochun. He was currently thinking about one of the top 5 beauties of the South Bank, Zhu Xinqi. I wonder what it would be like to hear a proud chosen like Zhu Xinqi call me sect uncle, he thought. The mere idea got him excited, and from that day on, he began to search relentlessly for Zhu Xinqi. As the saying goes, everything comes to him who waits. One day, he looked up and happened to see Zhu Xinqi soaring through the air on her blue flying silk. Sect niece Xinqi, he shouted. Zhu Xinqi's face twisted into an unsightly expression. She had heard about what Bai Xiaochun had been doing during the past month, and knew that all of the outer sect disciples had been talking about the matter in fearful tones. When the words sect niece Xinqi entered her ears, goosebumps sprang up all over her body. She immediately pretended as if she hadn't heard him and proceeded along her way. However, how could she have imagined that Bai Xiaochun would stubbornly run along beneath her, crying out at the top of his lungs, "Sect niece Xinqi, come on, have a chat with your sect uncle about life." He was actually bursting with excitement. He had been looking for Zhu Xinqi for quite some time, and having finally run into her, there was no way he would simply give up. Zhu Xinqi gritted her teeth and picked up speed. It was only by leaving Fragrant Cloud Peak that she was finally able to shake him. Bai Xiaochun watched as she flew away, and sighed with regret. It doesn't matter. You can fly, but I'll be able to fly eventually too. One of these days, I'll get you to call me Sect Uncle Bai. Feeling a bit depressed, he looked up at the darkening sky and then went to look for Du Lingfei. As soon as she saw him coming, she covered her mouth with her hand as she laughed. Sect Uncle Bai, Sect Uncle Bai, Sect Uncle Bai. Bai Xiaochun's spirits instantly soared because of Du Lingfei's charmingness. A few days before, one of the sect elders had taken her as an apprentice because of the services she had rendered. Then she had been assigned to Eastwood City to serve as the Spirit Stream sect's emissary there. It was a great opportunity for Du Lingfei. After spending a few years in Eastwood City, considering her past experience and meritorious service, she would be directly promoted into the inner sect. Furthermore, she would have lot of authority in Eastwood City, and access to even more abundant cultivation resources than were available in the main sect. Bai Xiaochun sighed with regret as he saw her off. Then he continued to wander around Fragrant Cloud Peak looking for interesting things to do. Time passed. A month later, the word Sect Uncle Bai had become somewhat taboo. Whenever anyone thought of them, they would laugh bitterly. By that point, Bai Xiaochun finally came to the conclusion that it was time to call an end to the matter. I, Bai Xiaochun, am the junior brother of the Spirit Stream sect's sect leader. I am the sect uncle to all disciples, not just the disciples on Fragrant Cloud Peak. I can't discriminate against the other mountain peaks. I need to go visit them too. After a bit of thought, he decided that it truly was the right thing to do. Thus, he headed toward Violet Cauldron Peak. 1. The Bao in Shu Baotsai's name means treasure, and Little Treasure sounds like the nickname of a child. Chapter 69, Bai Xiaochun, come offer greetings to the young lord. One month later, the outer sect disciples on Violet Cauldron Peak were about to go crazy. Bai Xiaochun had virtually made a career out of being a sect uncle, and everyone there knew it. They quickly came to find that it didn't matter where they went, they were likely to run into a very pure and fair young man, slender, with a certain proud look on his face that he tried to cover up, but was unable to. As he swaggered along, he would loudly clear his throat whenever he encountered another disciple, and if they pretended they didn't recognize him, he would immediately introduce himself. Their throats began to go hoarse from speaking the word Sect Uncle Bai, and yet, they had no choice but to continue doing so. After all, Bai Xiaochun was the junior brother of the sect leader, and in terms of seniority, he outranked everyone. Any disciple who dared to offend him was essentially violating sect rules. Eventually, people went to Big Fatty Zhong to ask for help. In turn, he made a huge fanfare about seeing Bai Xiaochun off to visit Green Crest Peak. Another month passed, and the disciples of Green Crest Peak were also driven crazy. That was especially true of Chen Fei and his two friends, who were soon frightened out of their minds. Once Bai Xiaochun began to do the rounds at Green Crest Peak, he would frequently look for them. Despite the fact that they would instantly begin to blabber greetings to Sect Uncle Bai, that didn't end things. Bai Xiaochun was quick to nitpick, and if they showed even an iota of disrespect, he would imply that he would report them to the Hall of Justice. Chen Fei and his friends began to shake with fear, and were soon treading on thin ice no matter where they went. In the end, they finally ratted out Chen Dajin. After giving them another good thrashing, Bai Xiaochun finally let them off the hook. Sighing, he left Green Crest Peak, all the while blaming himself for what was going on. The outer sect disciples all know me, but I haven't had a chance to meet any of the inner sect disciples. And then there's Chen Dajin. Does he really think I've forgotten about him? After a long moment of thought, Bai Xiaochun nodded deeply at the prospect of the immense pleasure he was about to experience. With that, he hurried off to find some inner sect disciples. In the following days, Bai Xiaochun made appearances on all three of the mountain peaks, most of the time in the areas occupied by the inner sect disciples. Considering his status, he could go almost anywhere in the Spirit Stream sect. However, he quickly lost interest. The inner sect disciples all happened to be in secluded meditation, and he hardly saw a single one even after a few months passed. That was especially true of Chen Dajin, whose Immortal's Cave was constantly under the protection of several spell formations. I refuse to believe this just a coincidence. Bai Xiaochun thought as he stood there in front of Chen Dajin's door. He tried to break through the spell formations, but considering they were there to protect the Immortal's Cave of an inner sect disciple, they were simply too powerful. Seeing that it was impossible for him to succeed on his own, he decided that it would be best to go get some help in breaking them open. However, it was at this point that two people appeared off in the distance, racing in his direction. They were inner sect disciples, one tall, one short, and as they closed in, they didn't even make a show of clasping their hands in greeting. The first one to speak was the tall one. "Voice cool," he said, "Sect Uncle Bai, how about you give my clan's young lord a bit of face and forget about what happened with Chen Dajin? Oh, by the way, that young lord is none other than Xianxia Qianyu." From the young man's tone of voice, he made it clear what he expected Bai Xiaochun to do. Xianxia Qianyu was the most respected among the three great chosen of the three mountain peaks of the South Bank. Latent talent such as his had been rare for at least 1,000 years on the south bank of the Spirit Stream sect, and although he was only an outer sect disciple, there was no question that he would soon reach foundation establishment. Because of that, many of the elders in the sect viewed Xianxia Qianyu as being a bit different from everyone else. Many people even hoped that he would eventually be able to outdo the disciples of the North Bank, and as such, a lot of resources were being put into his training. That in turn caused Xianxia Qianyu to have a lot of fans, especially on Green Crest Peak. Bai Xiaochun's expression was the same as ever. In the past, he might have started to get scared. However, his general fear of death did not indicate that he lacked courage. In fact, as long as a situation didn't carry the threat of death, he was actually quite dauntless. Because of his current status, there was virtually nothing and no one in the sect who could threaten his life, and therefore, he simply turned his nose up and stared at the two newcomers with a slight smile. When you meet an important person like me, but fail to offer formal greetings, it shows what great gall the two of you have, doesn't it? He flicked his sleeve. Who might it be that egged you on into such impertinent disrespect? Might it have been Xianxia Qianyu? The two inner sect disciples' expressions flickered, and the tall one's gaze turned sharp as he stared at Bai Xiaochun. "Sect Uncle Bai," he said, "you do best to pick your words a bit more carefully." Almost as soon as the words left his mouth, and before he could continue speaking, Bai Xiaochun suddenly vanished. A blast of wind swept across the inner sect disciple, who stared in shock as Bai Xiaochun appeared directly in front of him. His speed was so incredible that the two inner sect disciples hadn't even seen him move. Before they could react, Bai Xiaochun stretched his palm back and swept it toward the tall disciple's face, causing a sound like thunder to rumble out. Almost instantly, a protective shield sprang up from within the young man's robe, the result of a magical device given to all inner sect disciples. However, in almost the same instant that the shield appeared, Bai Xiaochun's palm landed, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces. It was completely incapable of standing up to the incredible power of Bai Xiaochun's palm. A massive slap rang out, and the tall disciple instantly saw stars. His mind thrummed, and he almost felt like he had been crushed by a mountain. Blood sprayed out of his mouth as he slammed into the ground, tumbling backward like a kite with its string cut. After rolling along for several dozen meters, shrieking the entire way, he finally lapsed into unconsciousness. Everything happened so quickly that the short disciple could do nothing more than stand there, mouth agape, mind spinning. After a moment, he began to edge backward, glancing first at his unconscious comrade and then back at Bai Xiaochun. Then he took a deep breath, and swallowed hard. "Why you," he stammered, pointing shakily at Bai Xiaochun. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that Bai Xiaochun's fleshly body power would be so shocking. It seemed on par with the 8th level of qi condensation. Bai Xiaochun turned slowly to look at the short disciple, and then said, "Can an inner sect disciple really gesture so rudely to someone of the elder generation?" Then he began to walk forward. Shrieking, the short disciple turned tail and fled. However, before he could get very far, the sound of a screaming wind filled the air as Bai Xiaochun bore down on him and once again unleashed a mighty slap. It was at that very moment that a stern, sinister voice rang out from down below. "Stay your hand." Suddenly, a newcomer appeared on the scene. However, Bai Xiaochun paid him no heed. His palm moved too quickly, and the short inner sect disciple was sent flying. Teeth spun through the air, and blood spattered. The disciple's neck seemed to be on the verge of breaking as he flew off to the side, unconscious. With that, Bai Xiaochun shook out his hand and looked at the person racing up from further down the mountain. It was a middle-aged man with a cultivation base in the 9th level of qi condensation, a level of power similar to Chen Heng. The man glared furiously at Bai Xiaochun and said, "Didn't you hear what I just said, Bai Xiaochun? Damn it!" Bai Xiaochun lifted his chin, smiled, and interrupted, "Sect nephew, are you looking to get slapped as well?" From the actions of the two disciples moments ago, as well as this man's words, it was clear that they didn't have the least bit of respect for him, and furthermore, even disdained him to some degree, as though they felt that they completely outranked him. Inner sect disciples like that were completely contemptible as far as he was concerned. Bai Xiaochun's words caused various expressions to flash across the man's face, and he bit back his next words. Bai Xiaochun's impressive display of fleshly body strength left him breathless and in complete shock. Now that the man thought about it, he realized that, considering Bai Xiaochun's status, it didn't matter what he did here, the Hall of Justice wouldn't care a bit. The middle-aged man stared at Bai Xiaochun for a long moment, suppressed his fury, and then explained his purpose in coming. "Bai Xiaochun, my clan's young lord wishes for you to go offer him formal greetings." He had actually been sent by Shangguan Qianyu to order Bai Xiaochun go offer formal greetings. In his opinion, his clan's young lord was making a mountain out of a molehill. Bai Xiaochun had lucked his way into being an important person, and was more of a clown than anything else. He had killed a few weak members of some cultivator clan, and it was only by chance that the sect ended up making a big deal about him. That certainly didn't earn him the right to be given face by a young lord who was already making his meteoric rise, and would certainly reach the gold core stage and forge a legend in the future. In fact, this man actually felt that being sent to fetch Bai Xiaochun to come offer greetings was a bit below his status. Bai Xiaochun could already see how arrogant of a person Shangguan Qianyu was. Considering his own status, if he didn't come in person, or if he chose to just send a message, it might be acceptable. But instead, he actually wanted Bai Xiaochun to go visit him. Even if he's a chosen, do you really think an outer sect disciple can order me to offer him greetings? He should be the one coming to greet me. The middle-aged man flicked his sleeve, sending out a blast of wind. "Bai Xiaochun," he grated furiously, "for my clan's young lord to ask you to go visit him is a huge show of face. Do you know how many people wish they could go offer formal greetings?" Before he could finish speaking, his face flickered, and he leaped backward. However, he was just a bit too slow. Bai Xiaochun appeared directly in front of him and reached back his palm. "How dare you!" The man's cultivation base was in the 9th level of qi condensation, and he unleashed all of its power, simultaneously performing an incantation gesture that summoned numerous wind blades. However, even as the wind blades appeared in front of him, Bai Xiaochun's palm smashed into them, crushing them like twigs. They couldn't provide even the slightest bit of protection. The palm proceeded onward almost as if nothing had attempted to block its way, landing almost instantly on the man's face. A slapping sound echoed out, followed by a scream. The middle-aged man staggered backward 30 meters or more before finally lurching to a stop. With that, Bai Xiaochun swished his sleeve and snorted arrogantly. "You're not even as powerful as Chen Heng. No wonder you're such a lackey. Screw off." The man looked back at Bai Xiaochun in astonishment. He was shaking visibly, and his cheek was already swelling up. Blood oozing from between his teeth, he quickly fled. After the man left, Bai Xiaochun looked back toward Chen Dajin's Immortal's cave with narrowed eyes. He was the type of person who feared death, and as such, if someone tried to kill him, he would seek revenge upon them no matter what. It didn't matter if Chen Dajin asked for help from Shangguan Qianyu. There was no possible way Bai Xiaochun would let him off the hook. Although Bai Xiaochun's actions in the sect recently had seemed somewhat casual, he had actually long since carried out a thorough investigation about Chen Dajin. "You think you can hide away in there?" he thought. "You think I have no way of making you show your face?" With a cold snort, he turned to leave. Based on his current status, what happened next was no surprise. A jade slip from the Hall of Justice appeared, a mission. It took only a moment for it to pass into Chen Dajin's Immortal's cave, and hover in the air in front of him. It was just like what had happened with Bai Xiaochun. Chen Dajin was being forced to accept a very dangerous mission outside the sect. A bitter smile appeared on his face, as he realized that he had no choice but to emerge from hiding to carry out the mission. However, he still clung to the hope that being outside of the sect might help him avoid catastrophe. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the lengths to which Bai Xiaochun would go to exact his revenge. He had already arranged for several such missions to be assigned to Chen Dajin. Furthermore, he'd asked for some help from Hu Yunfei. The Hu clan had a Foundation establishment patriarch, and access to other deep reserves. Considering how important Bai Xiaochun was to them, and coupled with the urgings of Hu Yunfei and Hu Xiaomai, they had become a powerful ally. With the help of the Hu clan, it was a foreordained certainty that Chen Dajin would be struck with misfortune during the course of trying to carry out the missions. It wasn't that the Hall of Justice was unaware of what had occurred with Chen Dajin, and how it led to Bai Xiaochun's fall in combat. However, despite the fact that the news was never spread publicly, internal records had been maintained. Now that Bai Xiaochun was back and wanted to settle accounts, there was little they could do to stop him. In fact, it was almost as if they owed him, and were simply allowing him to do what he wanted. To top it off, there were even some people who had already come to view Chen Dajin as dead. Chapter 70. Hey, Elder Brother Li. In a certain location near the summit of Green Crest Peak was a solitary little path. At the end of that path was a pool of water, within which swam several golden-colored fish. Next to the pond was an Immortal's cave. It was a somewhat remote and isolated place, very quiet, with abundant spiritual energy that clearly exceeded anything else nearby. On the bank of the pond sat a young man. He wore the long robe of an outer sect disciple, and was exceedingly good-looking, with long black hair, fair skin, and a refined, intelligent air. He was the type of young man that female disciples would sigh over constantly, whose phoenix-like eyes were delicate, and yet glistened with flickering light. Overall, he seemed completely unique. He currently held a fishing rod, which he would occasionally cast out into the pond, whereupon the fish would voraciously compete to gobble up the food attached to the end of the line. The middle-aged man who Bai Xiaochun had just slapped was hurrying up the path, face ashen. When he reached the end, he slowed down and respectfully clasped hands and bowed to the young man. "Greetings, young lord," he said through gritted teeth. "Young lord, Bai Xiaochun doesn't know how to appreciate favors. I carefully relayed your message, but instead of coming to offer greetings, he acted bossy and domineering. He thinks he can simply throw his weight around with impunity." The young man looked over, his expression seemingly ambivalent. "Well," he said coolly, "forget about it then. He's a nobody." It was mostly just on a whim that I thought to have him come offer greetings." The man nodded. "I think I understand what you mean, young lord. The reason he's a nobody is that the position of prestige disciple is only given to dead people, right? Plus, being the junior brother of the sect leader is a complete joke. In fact, his master is actually a corpse." The man chuckled coldly for a moment, but then shivered as he realized that the young man was staring at him with an icy expression. All of a sudden, the middle-aged man was struck with fear. Young lord. "It's true that he's a nobody," the young man said, "not even worth paying attention to. However, the sect leader's master is a former patriarch of our sect. Do you really think you qualify to even mention him? Go to the frigid abyss and slap yourself for 3 months straight as punishment." With that, the young man looked away and continued to feed his golden fish. Trembling, the middle-aged man nodded in assent and quickly took his leave. Having settled the issue of Chen Dajin, Bai Xiaochun returned to Fragrant Cloud Peak. He wasn't worried at all about Shangguan Tianyu. Considering the meritorious service he had performed for the sect, unless he turned traitor, his life wouldn't be in danger at all. As time passed, he lost some of his excitement over being called sect uncle, especially considering that most people avoided him at all costs. In fact, he actually came to feel a bit melancholy. However, one day he happened to wander into the scripture pavilion, whereupon his spirits were lifted almost instantly. He found that as soon as he arrived, he was immediately granted a reading space alongside the lecturing elders, where he could look down upon the countless disciples in attendance. He fell in love with the experience almost immediately, after which he came to frequent the mountaintop sermon pavilion. There he would sit, occasionally giving a smile and a nod to disciples down below, eyes sparkling with satisfaction. He looked very much like the Foundation Establishment elders whom he sat next to. The Foundation Establishment elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and as for the disciples from the various mountain peaks, their spirits couldn't be lower, but they had no choice but to simply stare up angrily at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun had found a new way to flaunt his status as the junior brother of the sect leader. When he came into the presence of the Foundation Establishment cultivators, he would immediately call them elder brother and elder sister. Although they didn't say anything in response, strange expressions could be seen on their faces, and any nearby disciples would eventually be forced to utter the words sect Uncle Bai. Things went on like that for some time until one day, Bai Xiaochun happened to run into Li Qinghao. Unable to restrain himself, Bai Xiaochun immediately cried out in an amiable tone, "Hey, elder brother Li." Li Qinghao looked a bit haggard. He had been working this entire time on concocting the 9 Ultimates pill, and was currently on his way out of the sect. As soon as the words entered his ears, his jaw dropped, and he looked around until his gaze came to fall on Bai Xiaochun. Then, his cheek twitched. Although he had been spending all his time on pill concocting lately, he had heard about Bai Xiaochun's antics, which had turned into quite a headache. To hear Bai Xiaochun addressing him in such a fashion left Li Qinghao glaring in shock. As soon as the words left his mouth, Bai Xiaochun regretted speaking them. Seeing Li Qinghao's reaction then caused him to suck in a breath. After all, Li Qinghao was the person he feared most in the entire sect. Grimacing, he shivered and quickly said, "Uncle Li. My mistake." However, there was really nothing Li Qinghao could do, and he knew it. Glaring even harder at Bai Xiaochun, he decided to rebuke him a bit for his recent behavior. "I'm leaving the sect for a bit," he said. "At the soonest, I'll be back in a few months, at the most, a year. Don't even think of fooling around while I'm gone. Work hard at your cultivation." After a few more words of exhortation, he turned and left. Bai Xiaochun let out a long sigh of relief as Li Qinghao made his way off into the distance. A glimmer of fear could be seen in his eyes, but at the same time, a bit of warmth and respect for one of his elders could also be seen. He couldn't help but remember what Du Lingfei said about the time he had gone missing, and how Li Qinghu had spent 2 months searching for him on his own. Upon his return, Li Qinghu had been in quite a sorry state, and seemed to blame himself for what had happened. After Bai Xiaochun's father and mother fell sick and died, he hadn't shown such warmth and respect to anyone. At some point, though, he had come to view Li Qinghu as one of his own relatives. Because of Li Qinghu's admonition, Bai Xiaochun changed his ways for about half a month. During that time, he ceased clearing his throat to attract attention, and instead focused his attention on Xianxia's Immortal's Cave. In all of the sect, she was the only person who knew him personally but refused to call him sect Uncle Bai. After a few months passed, he started to get a bit depressed. After all, he could only catch sight of Xianxia whizzing around on her blue flying silk. Considering that he was incapable of flight, it didn't matter how much he chased after her, he could only watch in dismay as she flew away. There are probably only a few magical devices in the whole sect that Qi condensation disciples can use to fly. Without a special technique like the one that Chen Heng used, the only way to fly is to get one of those magical devices. It's so unfair. My master should have gifted me with such an item. My master. Sighing, he walked along for a bit more before suddenly stopping in his tracks. Looking up in thought for a moment, he suddenly turned and headed toward Mount Daoseed. As the junior brother of the sect leader, he had unrestricted access to Mount Daoseed, and before long, there he was at the top of the mountain, where sect leader Zheng Yuandong's grand hall was located. Swaggering in, Bai Xiaochun called out, "Elder brother sect leader, oh dear elder brother sect leader. I want to go offer incense to my master." Zheng Yuandong sat there in the hall cross-legged in meditation. As soon as he heard Bai Xiaochun's voice, he sighed. In recent days, so many people had come to visit him that he had lost count. He had heard all about Bai Xiaochun's doings, and had long since come to regret the situation. Unfortunately, as the old saying went, the timber had already been crafted into a boat, and there was little to be done. After all, despite Bai Xiaochun's peculiar preoccupations, he wasn't doing anything to hurt anyone. Hearing Bai Xiaochun continue to call out to him, Zheng Yuandong slowly rose to his feet, cleared his throat, and looked over solemnly. "Calm down, I heard you." Looking very charming, Bai Xiaochun hurried over and clasped hands in greeting. "Junior brother offers greetings, elder brother sect leader." Zheng Yuandong sighed inwardly. Although he knew what was going on, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile wryly as he led Bai Xiaochun into the restricted area behind the mountain. In the Immortal's Cave in that area, a portrait was hung on the wall depicting a middle-aged man. The man smiled faintly as he looked off into the distance, emanating a unique aura that made his image look quite lifelike. Beneath the portrait was a small tribute altar, upon which could be seen some spirit fruits and spirit candles. The Immortal's Cave was simple but elegant, and filled one with a sense of incredible dignity. As soon as Bai Xiaochun entered, he hurried over to the portrait and plopped down into a kneeling position. Then he began to kowtow deeply, touching the floor with his forehead 9 times, his expression very solemn. Finally, he looked up at the portrait, his eyes radiating pious sincerity. "Master, apprentice has come to pay respects." Zheng Yuandong stood off to the side looking on. Although he knew Bai Xiaochun was stubborn and mischievous, he also could tell that he had a filial heart. Considering Zheng Yuandong's experience in life, he was able to tell from Bai Xiaochun's expression that the pious sincerity was real, and not an act. But then, Bai Xiaochun continued to speak. "Master, your apprentice has been going through some tough times. I can't even fly. Other disciples' masters have all given them magical items to help them fly, as well as life-protecting treasures. Sadly, I don't have anything. But that's fine, master. Your apprentice doesn't care about material things anyway. As long as I can burn some incense for you, sir, then I'm happy. Who knows, maybe your spirit in heaven will hear me and somehow manage to bequeath me with something." When Zhang Yuandong heard this, his eyes went wide. "Master, it wasn't very long ago that your apprentice gave everything to protect the sect, to ensure that its 10,000-year legacy continued on. To protect the honor of the sect, I was chased down relentlessly, and during that time, all of my magical items were lost or ruined. I came back to the sect without anything to call my own. My bags are empty. I'm more impoverished than a servant. I don't want you to feel any pressure, though, master. It's fine. Your apprentice isn't afraid of lacking defensive magical items. Even if I don't have a magical flight device, I'll still go through hell or high water for the sect. It's my duty. However, if enough time goes by and I haven't come to burn incense for you, master, then that will just go to show that my lack of life-protecting magical items and magical flight devices has caused me to lose my poor little life. At least then I will be able to personally go to reunite with you, sir." Even as he spoke, Bai Xiaochun looked out at his dear elder brother sect leader out of the corner of his eye. Zheng Yuandong's face twitched. He was truly stupefied. In all the years he had practiced cultivation, this was the first time he had ever encountered a disciple as outlandish as Bai Xiaochun. Chuckling bitterly in his heart, he looked up at the portrait of his master, and then thought for a long moment. It was true that when he had first been apprenticed to his master, he had been bequeathed with a protective magical device. Having reached this point in his train of thought, Zheng Yuandong looked over at Bai Xiaochun, his gaze softening. Before long, Bai Xiaochun and Zheng Yuandong left the immortal's cave. The entire time, Bai Xiaochun was looking at Zheng Yuandong out of the corner of his eye. Eventually, they reached the grand hall on Mount Daoseed, whereupon Zheng Yuandong stopped walking. Turning to look at Bai Xiaochun, he waved his hand, causing 2 streams of light to fly out, one of them gold, the other white. The golden light contained a palm-sized flying sword. However, its mere appearance caused the air around it to distort as it radiated waves of heat. It seemed completely extraordinary, and was covered with countless complicated magical symbols which glittered radiantly, and caused fluctuations to spill out in all directions. The white light contained a small shield, also palm-sized. It was made of white jade, and carved with extremely lifelike immortal cranes. It also radiated an intense warmth. Bai Xiaochun could instantly tell that they were extraordinary items. Eyes shining, he began to pant as he realized that there was something even more outstanding to the 2 items. Both of them were decorated with 3 unique flowing sets of lines. Zheng Yuandong looked gently at Bai Xiaochun, his eyes gleaming with encouragement. Within the golden crow sword is sealed a golden crow, he said. It contains the power of blazing fire, and can summon an illusory golden crow of the same cultivation base as the person summoning it. It can be used to fly, and can be used until the early foundation establishment stage. If it is destroyed, it will unleash incredible power. The Divine Crane Shield is a defensive magical device created from the soul of an immortal crane. It can protect you from any deadly crisis less powerful than foundation establishment. My master performed 3-fold spirit enhancements on both of these items, but didn't dare to proceed beyond that. Back when I joined the sect, my master gave them to me, and I hereby represent him to bequeath them to you. Bai Xiaochun excitedly accepted the items and began to fondle them admiringly. Thank you, master. Thank you, dear elder brother sect leader.